All right, everyone. Welcome to the October 22nd, 2025 meeting of Arlington's Transportation Future Advisory Working Group. This meeting is open to the public, and time for public comment will be reserved for at the end of the meeting. During the main portion of the meeting, conversation is limited to members of the advisory working group as well as staff and consultants who are supporting the group. All meeting participants, please keep your devices muted until you're called upon by the chair. That's me. So if you're not muted right now would be a great time to smash that mute button. If you lose internet during the meeting, don't hesitate to reconnect via phone. That phone number is in the meeting invitation. The Microsoft Teams chat is active only for two purposes. One, for advisor group members who need technical assistance, and second, for members of the public who want to add their name to the list for public comment, which will be taken again at the end of the meeting. Teams chat should not be used for discussion. Those are planning to provide public comment will need to do so at the end of the meeting. The chat doesn't serve that opportunity. All public comment must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period. So my advisory working group members, I think we're all pretty clear on this at this point, but if you wish to be recognized during the course of the meeting, just raise your virtual hand in Teams and wait to be called upon. Do we have any advisory working group members participating via phone today? If so, speak up now, but I don't see any phone numbers on the participant list. All right, coolio, I can skip that part. So for members of the public who are not in the advisory working group, you'll be called on to speak at the end of the meeting. You'll get either 2 or 3 minutes, depending on how much time we're able to save there at the end for you and how many people sign up. If you wish to speak, go ahead and put your name into the meeting chat and we'll put you on the list. This is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with the meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. And with that, let's roll into the actual meeting. Let's start with introductions. I'm Chris Slatt. I'm the chair of this working group here. And let's see, I know Arnak is not here tonight, but who have we got representing Bicycle Advisory Committee? I feel like I saw Mike.
Yeah, it's me. Sorry. I'm having trouble mashing buttons. Mike Hanna, I'm here.
Great to see you, Mike. How about C2E2? Somebody from C2E2. Commission on Aging.
Hi, Catalina Calichan.
Welcome, Catalina. Disability Advisory Committee.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Prio.
Good to see you, Elizabeth. Economic Development Commission. Not seeing anyone. Fiscal Affairs Advisory. Not seeing anyone. Forestry and Natural Resources. I believe I saw.
Carrie, right here. Hi, Chris.
Good to see you. Neighborhood Complete Streets.
Friendly Neighborhood, Aaron Schutz here.
Aaron, nice to see you again. How about Parks and Rec Commission? All right. Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Hi, Pam Van Hyne. I'm keeping my computer off because it's
no worries.
Working.
Good to hear you, Pam. Planning Commission.
Hey, this is Tony Striner from the Planning Commission.
Good to see you, Tony. How about Transit Advisory Committee?
Hi, this is Mariela Garcia Colbert from TAP.
Hey there, Maria. And Transportation Commission, I think I saw Justin come in for sure.
Hi, yes, Justin Furman here for Transportation Commission.
And do we have a second tonight for TC or no?
I think it's just me.
All right, just Justin.
I also do see Daniel Gary from PRC. Maybe he just stepped away from his computer.
Alrighty. Oh,
Mike not working.
No worries.
Wanted to make sure they got credit for being here tonight.
Awesome. All right. Next slide.
Staff?
Oh, right. Yeah, staff. Let's do staff.
I feel like you all know us at this point, but I'll start off. I'm Kristen Calkins. I'm the project manager for Arlington's Transportation Future. Next, I'll have my deputy project manager introduce himself, then Allison, our CAPE team members, and our supporting consultants.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Brian Shelton, deputy project manager and active transportation planner.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Allison Bullock, transportation planning manager.
Hi, all. Glad to see you again. And Aaron, do transportation engagement on this project and with Transportation Division.
Nate Graham, public engagement for transportation projects.
Good evening, everyone. David Samba, consultant team project manager.
Hi all, Nick Adamo, transportation planner with the consultant team.
All right, first up, we would love to give the folks who did the very intense homework an opportunity to present that, so that we can all kind of hear everybody else's take on let's see, we got the opportunities to reach each goal, the challenges to achieve each goal, and I think we're going to do that first. So we'll just go through the groups that submitted homework and share those opportunities and those challenges. And once everybody's had a chance to do that, we'll go back through and get at least the high level overview of what folks submitted on the priority network gap analysis. So let me rearrange my screen here real quick and go through the homework. I think I'm going to go in roughly alphabetical order. So if we can start with BAC, Mike, if you're able to present those opportunities and those challenges that the BAC submitted.
Okay, got to give me just a second to get them up.
No worries.
Yeah. Okay, so do you really want me to go through each one, and how do you want to do this?
Yeah, I can't remember if you guys were terse or if you were long-winded, but yeah, let's get each opportunity and challenge in.
Okay.
If they're super long, then maybe you can summarize them instead of reading word for word.
Well, so for equity and inclusivity, equitable and inclusive, sorry. Challenges were noted as the cost of micro-mobility devices, bicycles and transit for low-income riders. Bus routes can be difficult to use, particularly for seniors and occasional users. Limited space for transportation facilities were also seen as challenges. Opportunities were to subsidize capital bike shares, commercial scooters, and bus fares, and make them actually free for low-income riders. Keep routes stable, publish maps, mark stops with clear route labels, make the next bus system work at every stop. Use the space we already have in terms of our curb-to-curb space, and actually prioritize non-vehicle travel. And then working with the APS to reach children, educate on transportation options, encourage healthy transportation options such as walking and biking at schools. That was the first one. Under livable, challenges we identified was the perception of safety among pedestrians, bicycles, and micromobility users. We saw a challenge as the lack of willingness to make real changes to the transportation network to make non-driving modes safe, comfortable, and convenient. And then the fact that often bus transportation was unpleasant. Opportunities was provide more robust pedestrian refuges where crosswalks are too long. We've done some of that, but do more of that. Use video sensors to increase crossing times when pedestrians are still in the crosswalk. No turn on red everywhere, and improve bus shelters throughout the county. Under reliable, challenges was route disruptions, especially at construction sites. So we had asked that the county ensure that bike lane sidewalk closures for constructions were evaluated and approved, prior to being approved, and then strict enforcement of the rules for contractors. We also had to require key county staff bike and walk through construction areas at regular intervals to maintain awareness of the level of disruption the users and appropriate mitigations, and provide direct complaint lines for basically maintenance of traffic situations. A challenge in is blocked bicycle lanes. We see that all the time, obviously. So an opportunity is to increase enforcement, maybe to use video technology to issue tickets for drivers that block bike lanes. And then a challenge was the reliability of micro-mobility devices. And the opportunity was to enforce equipment durability standards for micro-mobility companies and fast response standards. Under safe, We identified vulnerable road users from drunk drivers specifically. The opportunity was to adopt Scandinavian standards and penalties for drunk driving. Speeding was a challenge, and use of speed cameras on all arterials to ticket offenders. Asked for reporting on areas where residents have complained to ACPD about unsafe driving behavior. Funding Vision Zero at a high level, and develop and enforce safe design standards for all intersections that prioritize bike and pedestrian safety. Then under sustainable, we had motor vehicles are still seen by most staff and citizens as standard, quote unquote, mode of transportation. An opportunity would be to identify roads in which motor vehicles will be prioritized and specifically identify roads in which they will not be prioritized. The current system assumes motor vehicles will be prioritized on all roads. Challenge is to promote walking and self-powered vehicles. Let's see. Well, opportunity is to discourage use of internal combustion vehicles of all type. And one item was to convert all county vehicles to electric or hydrogen power. And then under transparent and accountable, which is the last one, a challenge is to prove that county officials are cooperating in reaching the goals. And one opportunity would be to publish annual estimates of county officials' use of non-vehicular transportation. Challenge was goals are seen as nebulous or aspirational. An opportunity is to provide measurable goals and annual updates, provide tracking of all projects and to the extent to which they fulfill the goals of the MTP. Challenge is that real progress is often dependent on redevelopment, and the opportunity is to provide dedicated funding specifically for transforming the transportation system with a robust CIP and tracking of progress. Whew, okay, that's all.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. And I'm remembering right, we do not have a C2E2 representative here tonight, right? All righty. So FNRC, can you present your challenges and opportunities in about 5 minutes or less?
Did you skip Disability Advisory Commission, or you're not going alphabetical?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Like, yes, go ahead, DAC.
Okay, hi, it's Elizabeth. I am holding it too close. You can't really see my face there. We had as a challenge that multimodal only listed bikes and, well, the things that it listed. It did not include wheelchairs and scooters. And that is actually one of the challenges for us, because in the disability field, when we say something is accessible, we mean it's accessible to people with disabilities, i.e. wheelchairs and scooters. And what you guys mean is another meaning, accessible to the community. So that's the challenge. The opportunity is to add wheelchairs and scooters wherever you say multimodal, and somehow make clear that is also something to be prioritized. Another challenge is that it often takes a long time for people who make requests for curb cuts to be provided if they live on a street that where they cannot easily get to a curb cut. Let's say, for example, where I live, where there's lawns to go across other people's lawns in order to get to a curb cut. And that's the challenge. And the opportunity is to ask the county to put at the top of the list any accessibility related requests, particularly curb cuts. The same would be for, I know the county has already agreed not to do the red bricks, and that's wonderful. But as far as until they go away, that's just on new sidewalks. For the existing sidewalk, we would want the opportunity to be, again, to prioritize fixing those because there are a lot of very large bricks missing and big holes. Another, well, those are the main, but we did want to say that we agree with the pedestrian advisory committee that recommended these sensors to help people who have not yet finished crossing the street, if there was some sort of sensor capability to be able to maybe make the time extend for a little longer. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Next up, FNRC.
Great, thanks, Chris. We were a bit long-winded, so I'll spare you the full.
Yeah, I'll summarize it into 5 if we can.
So in terms of equitable, it was better transit, better connections, buses, metro, buses more frequently, easier and safer biking and walking, which includes bike parking. It's a huge prerequisite for people to bike more. It's a place they can leave their bikes outside their apartments or outside their workplaces. And also subsidies for e-bikes for lower income people. The livable is where we really went wild. In general, our recommendations focus around less space for cars and more space for people and nature. And we recommend that the county go through all the streets systematically to see where they can be narrowed, where you can put in curb bump outs, roundabouts, anything to add less space for cars, more space for green, which would accomplish a huge number of the goals, including stormwater management and traffic calming. All the studies show, in fact, that trees are one of the most effective ways to slow traffic. And it would provide all these additional benefits. We provide some examples around the world in French cities where they've taken a lot of impermeable surface and turned it into green space. Places in Vienna where they've taken curb bump outs to make little mini parks. All these things would dramatically improve the quality of life while accomplishing all these other goals. We suggest that the county should set firm goals for reducing vehicle miles traveled, even considering congestion pricing or some of the more sophisticated approaches to congestion pricing, and to make access to nature a much higher priority, including things like green corridors and streets and bike paths that are designed and planted to allow people to connect to parks and things like that. Safety, all of the above. We bring in some studies to show that lowering speed limits can be remarkably effective in reducing traffic deaths, like Helsinki, Finland, that went a whole year without any deaths after reducing its speed limit without any really reduction in travel time. So it's something the county consider. Make biking and walking safer with more protected bike lanes, bike boulevards, bike buses for kids to get to school. And then a personal pet peeve, increase the use of turn signals by cars through a greater enforcement, which is one of the great threats for pedestrians and bicyclists, is not knowing where cars will be going. Sustainable, it's a lot of the same things we already discussed, especially in more green space, reducing the heat island effect, that sort of thing. Transparent and accountable, we see big challenges for the county in making the kinds of changes that we recommend, like less parking, more green space, which would face large opposition. So we recommend that the county gather all the studies that, as we tried to do in our recommendations, to support these policies and show how effective they will be in the long run. That's it.
Great work. Thank you so much. So now let's bounce back to the Commission on Aging, because apparently the alphabet is hard for me tonight.
No worries. So for us, for SAFE, we had that some challenges are just simply that, transportation options may be non-existent, limited, or expensive. Sorry, loud dogs. Transportation options might be limited, non-existent, or just expensive, depending on where you are, what time of day it is, etc. Residents may not always know about these things or have access to that information in their native language. Sidewalk conditions can vary across the county, especially when construction is underway. It can be quite destructive sometimes to walkways, and the detours aren't always safe for older adults and people with disabilities. So some opportunities were continuing to, collaborate with a variety of transportation focus groups across the county, like Walk Arlington, Vision Zero, other entities focused on older adults, like the Social 60 cafes, DPR and the 55 plus program, independent living residences, all those sorts of groups to gather input and really understand needs, and partnering with schools, churches, community centers, to maybe host pedestrian, transit, driver safety programs that can help educate folks. And of course, just maintaining and improving sidewalks, crosswalks, etc., including bus shelters and street lighting, things that help you feel comfortable and safe. For equitable and inclusive, we talked about some challenges, again, being that, some materials and documents and resources might not be translated into all languages. There might be challenges kind of raising awareness or implementing new initiatives, even when programs do exist. And maybe the county might not have specific connections to some stakeholder groups, and that therefore struggle to get input and engagement. We were just sort of thinking about what could be potential things that come up. But opportunities, of course, are to continue to try to engage diverse groups of people across the county, get out to, local events, talk to residential building managers, just trying to get into all these places to understand what the needs are. And then another key piece, I think, of this is, or what we think is evaluating the existing paratransit options, like STAR, to understand issues there and areas for improvement, because there are a lot of folks that we've talked to that have complaints about those services, and those are critical for a lot of the people that we're serving. For sustainable, I think one of the biggest challenges is the fact that the goals, the environmental goals that come with these sustainability efforts can sometimes clash with the transportation realities of older adults who might still, rely primarily on car and not always do too much biking or walking. So there were some conversations with our committee and commission about those topics, and perhaps an opportunity there is to just try to foster intergenerational collaboration around the future of transportation, maybe empowering youth advocates to partner with older adults to think about that need for and desire for having access to cars and parking and curb space when you need it, but still, striving to be really aggressive with our sustainability and equity goals. Another piece is, or for reliable, a couple of the challenges were just the fact that, time and resource constraints can make things difficult. Clear and consistent communications, not always easy, especially with diverse audiences. But a couple opportunities could be just being really clear and simple in language on maps and signage, and supporting older adults that are trying to navigate the bus or the metro as pedestrians. Because even the exercise with the modal networks was a bit challenging for our group, and it was hard to get input just because of the way the map looked. And I know those were early drafts, but without the reference points and without being able to clearly see the street names and things like that, it was very challenging to give feedback. And then, of course, investing in technology is an opportunity, real-time data, some of that has been mentioned here. The last couple things quickly, for livable, a challenge is just, again, sort of around, and meeting the needs of diverse groups and getting ongoing feedback and monitoring, building relationships, making sure that you're determining like what's actually viable and And then a couple opportunities are perhaps expanding some transit routes or specialized transportation options like van loops or limited time event shuttles to parks and community centers and health facilities or places that promote social connection, well-being, both like on a temporary basis and also long-term. We already have some of those kind of loops, like farmers market loops and such, but maybe doing more of that, prioritizing, again, clean, comfortable, shaded areas. And then the last one, transparent and accountable. Stakeholders might not understand sort of the full picture, and in different groups, different perspectives, as a challenge, but an opportunity is continuing to use trusted community venues to just get the word out, listen to people, share information, and hold the county accountable. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. I believe our C2E2 rep has arrived. If you want to say hi and introduce yourself real quick.
Yes, my apologies. I was held up in my previous meeting. My name is Liliana Diaz, and I'm very pleased to be part of this advisory group. I am taking on the baton from a person who was very knowledgeable, so big shoes to fill. I am a commissioner with C2E2 since I think February of this year. And I am by trade an economist slash policy expert, and I have about 16 years of experience in the consulting industry, and very excited to collaborate with you guys.
Great, welcome. We're going through and sharing like a 5-minute summary of the homework that was just submitted, the challenges and opportunities. So I'm going to do neighborhood complete streets and then pedestrian advisory committee. And then I'd love to come back to C2E2 if you're able to present that when we get back around to that, if that's cool.
You mean the feedback that we provided?
Yeah, just like a 5-minute summary of the opportunities and opportunities and challenges section.
Okay, perfect. Sure.
Awesome, great. So yeah, and the neighborhood complete streets.
All right. So a couple of opportunities we found. First of all is thinking big. This is really a chance to revamp the county's total approach to transit. So can we make less reliance on cars? Can we actually think about real changes here to how things are going? I think this is a great opportunity. And I know there's been a lot of push from some of the committees and commissions for the Transportation Commission to think bigger about this. So we have an opportunity here. I think a lot linking with that, the opportunity to do big things, closing streets, building bridges, removing asphalt, improving routing. And this has already been mentioned, what Paris is doing, what New York City has been doing, things that are having a very immediate impact on how people choose to get around. It seems very positive. I think it was John that was mentioning the congestive pricing things. We have a chance to really look at some of these things as we're trying to really fix things for the future. In the same way as the transportation planning here, we're trying to de-silo what we're doing to get the bike element and the pedestrian element and all these other elements kind of integrated. I think Arlington overall, this is a chance to do that. There's this Project 2050 and all these, seems like every different silo in Arlington is trying to update their plans. And this is a chance, I think, to kind of work across groups in Arlington government to de-silo Arlington. The county government wants to get rid of combustion engines and go all electric. They're spending a lot of money to do that. But then we're also very pro-growth and bringing much more cars in and getting much more cars passing through our roads and stuff. So we kind of are going at cross purposes on some of this stuff. So it's a chance to try to integrate and have what we're doing speak with what the forestry is doing, is what they're looking at new urban planning things. Challenges, I think it was Catalina said time and resource constraints, big thing. We don't have enough money in the county, and every year I'm a teacher in the county, and every year we hear this is a terrible budget year. The next year it's a terrible budget year. The next year it's a terrible budget year. What we're talking about here is big, and it's expensive, and we need some of these changes. And I think it might have been Mike that said mostly happens with redevelopment, not often with just county initiative. We just can't afford some of these things. So that's a real issue, and things take a long time. The Military Road roundabout, 2 years to build that circle in the middle of the street. It's going to be 50 years before we make an impact on Arlington, which doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing this, but that's a real challenge. I'd like to see it happen while I'm still biking around Arlington. Competing goals, it's a real struggle. We want to support businesses. Cars moving around is helpful for customers. Wide streets is easier for fire departments, but all of these things are in conflict, apparent conflict with a lot of the other goals that we have. So trying to balance lowering the TVM with the pro-growth mindset. Some people think Arlington should solve the region's housing crisis single-handedly. We can't do that. So do we limit growth to serve some of these purposes? And so again, consistency and cooperation across places in the county is a real challenge. Last thing, predicting the future. It's tough. I'd put a note in there. I think the Don Rumsfeld poem, you want to call that, of the known knowns and the known unknowns. There's a lot of things coming up. 20 years ago, we wouldn't have predicted where we are right now with transportation things, the micromobility, the GPS prevalence, how AI is engaging with our street networks already. It's hard to predict what's going to be 20 years from now. It's not going to be twice as much. It's going to be 200 times as much change is what we're seeing. So trying to predict what the future is going to look like, what technology can provide for us, and what it's going to do that's going to surprise us. So that's a real hard thing to track. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. All right, how about Pam for pedestrian advisory?
Yeah, Pam, the pedestrian reporting. I'm going to keep this fairly short. Our submission was quite long. We had 2, often 3 goals for every single thing, goals and challenges, and opportunities. So I'm just going to do some of the highlights. And as I was rereading this, I realized that a lot of these points have already been mentioned, and B, we mentioned more than once. So they've got to be really important. Under equitable and inclusive, I'm noting that it's race, the underserved, and those with impairments, people of all ages and abilities. It's just pretty much everyone in different categories. The point that came up a couple times with this, that this is an opportunity to fix things so that all of these people will be willing and able to use them and to switch to non-vehicular driving, and that would just be wonderful. And we made that point a couple times, and I think that's a great point. Challenges, again, these show up all the time. Insufficient funds to fix everything, and insufficient political will, and the car culture, and those challenges are pretty much throughout. Livable, one of the best comments, and I had great feedback from all the PAC members except 2, so I was condensing all kinds of comments in this. Align accessible routes with destinations, and again, I fully support Beth's comments on accessible from the disability viewpoint, that you've got to be able to actually get through it easily and designed to manage all the possible disabilities that are out there and impairments. Reliable. Again, all routes should be fully accessible in inclement weather. Wouldn't that be nice as an opportunity? We certainly got that this winter. Challenges besides the ones that are always there. Setting fair priorities, because there's so many competing needs, and closing all the gaps. Safe. again, the same comment for equitable and inclusive, that if we make things truly safe, we will encourage these more vulnerable groups to actually be able to switch to away from cars and to other modes of transportation. And that's a worthy goal. Challenges includes changing the driving culture, improving enforcement, improving maintenance of infrastructure, including streetlights, encouraging purchase of smaller, safer vehicles. Sustainable. The big challenge we have here is car culture. And that there are a few people who always have to drive. There are some people who have to drive some of the time, and there are most people who have to drive a little bit of the time. And for a lot of these people, there are very legitimate reasons why they have to drive. If you are disabled, if you have family obligations, if you have a job that is odd hours or irregular hours or is way far away from Arlington with no transportation close to it. All of these things are legitimate reasons for some people having to drive, and we need to accommodate that so far and listen to people. And we had a really good discussion about this in the backpack meeting, which is, I think, on the back website. A lot of good comments from Jillian, that their fear is that if we make all the major roads like complete streets, they're wonderful for the rest of us. But drivers are not going to like them. Drivers are going to, they're going to be really mad about this plan, but they're also going to go drive on the local streets. And that's going to get the neighborhoods unhappy, and we don't want to go there. And we've already had that with Route 1. But part of that is, how do we encourage other drivers to switch modes? I have no idea. It's fairly embedded. And transparent and accountable. One of the opportunities is building trust among priority users. If we have a good system and it actually works, people go, yay, Rob, we'll do this. Challenges. Ensuring the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, and transit riders are prioritized over drivers and parking, and creating real engagement with committees on transportation project plans. And that's about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam. So let's do plan. Oh, yeah. So let's jump back to C2E2 now, and then we'll do Planning Commission after that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we also have our commissioners very active, providing feedback. For the first goal, equitable and inclusive, we saw an opportunity to accommodate the transportation of middle and high school students through the art service, to give them greater freedom to attend after-school activities and when they socialize with friends. So get them early, educate them about public transportation. We also think that there is an opportunity to make sure that the actual infrastructure for pedestrians to encourage walking is in good repair. Particularly because that offers an opportunity for handicapped pedestrians. We also thought, and this can be a bit, I don't know, controversial, that we could suggest offering free, reduced fare and monthly passes to reduce economic burden of transportation and encourage more people to use transit and bike share options. And on the challenges, we noticed that there could be a digital divide barrier, because not necessarily all Arlington residents, particularly low-income communities and elderly residents, may have access to transportation apps, to digital payment platforms, and they may be excluded. We also noticed that there is a geographic equity gap, where the lower density neighborhoods and equity priority areas often have less frequent transit service and fewer high quality bicycle facilities. And we need to address that challenge. And that there is also a challenge with the first last mile connectivity, particularly for people, elderly people, and that creates mobility limitations that we have to be aware of. For the livable goal, we have as opportunities incorporating planting of trees and native vegetation as part of standard strict design. Maybe think about corridors or roads that could actually be blocked to create more open spaces where there is tree canopy, and to work with local businesses to offer discounts or incentives to customers who use transit rather than to drive. As challenges, we of course understand that there might be some parking reduction resistance. If we repurpose parking spaces or narrow roads to accommodate the canopy tree, we're going to face opposition from the people who drive a car. We also noticed that there is a challenge with regards to the upfront cost that planting this canopy tree and beautifying streets may entail versus the long-term benefits. And that comes when the budget is decided. Could this be a priority? And also to think about the maintenance burden, because the enhanced streetscapes with vegetation and street furniture and public spaces require ongoing maintenance, and that needs to be funded and that needs to be budgeted for. For the reliable goal, we saw opportunities to deploy this idea of transportation as a service models and the use of technology combined with microtransit to connect riders in low-density neighborhoods to local businesses, to services, community facilities, to premium transit routes and metro. We also think that there is an opportunity to work with regional transit authorities to expand intra-regional transit, including the bus rapid transit routes, so that people can actually go from their home to whatever location they wish to get to in public transportation. And we also think there is an opportunity to expand north and south routes to improve connectivity within Arlington and increase the frequency on transit routes to make it more convenient for users. We also notice as challenges, as the previous speaker talked about, that more extreme weather events will increasingly stress and damage existing infrastructure. That becomes a problem. We also think that there are challenges with funding and of course the behavioral change. We need education and information programs to promote the use of transit and other multimodal transportation options. And that needs to be expanded. And again, that requires money. So it's a challenge to think about that. For the safe goal, we were several commissioners talked about promoting walking school bus and biking school bus programs to encourage more students to walk or bike to school. And this is because if we want to change the behavioral problem that we have with driving, we need to get to the children and we need to educate them and form a habit. We need to regulate some forms of micromobility that we are promoting, like e-bikes and scooters, to prevent accidents. And we need to increase the development and connectivity of protected bike lanes and to allow bicycles to be the main mode of transport across Arlington. Again, as challenges, we notice that there will be funding limitations. There may be some implementation tensions with the pedestrian priority principle, with the modal priority framework that the staff has put together. And we also notice that a challenge is that when you regulate something, you have to have not only the written rules, but you also have to have enforcement capacity, the compliance challenge. And that requires funding, that requires creating an infrastructure to make sure that the regulations are complied with. For the sustainable goal, we're thinking that a big opportunity is to continue pushing for the transition of all county fleets, including the ART, the school buses, the emergency vehicles, and the heavy vehicles to zero emission vehicles, to promote the development of EV charging infrastructure in public and private property, and to establish policies for the use of low carbon and recycled materials in transportation construction projects, to establish policies to ensure that transportation projects are designed and constructed to be resilient to extreme weather conditions. So thinking about the future risk, physical risk of climate change. And as challenges, we notice that there is going to be a limitation in terms of space for charging infrastructure, some technological challenges because some of the electric vehicle types are still nascent, the technology. We also notice that there may be a possibility of a regional coordination failure because our decisions as a county on sustainability outcomes depend heavily on the decisions made by neighboring jurisdictions and regional entities. So a lot of coordination needs to happen. For transparent and accountable, we saw as opportunity to establish a robust set of goals and measures and regularly track progress towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions, to reduce overall traffic, the mode shifts from single occupancy vehicles to transit and active modes and transportations. The reason why it's because if you don't set goals and actual KPMs, you don't really know if you progress or not. And we also saw as an opportunity to establish a pricing mechanism for on-street parking that reflect the value of using this real estate. As challenges, we notice that there is a trade-off of communication complexity. For example, for the priority mode, it's going to be difficult to educate and communicate to the public the priority or why specific projects are delayed. And so that requires sophisticated public engagement, and I'm sure that the county staff is all aware of it, but we notice that as a challenge. We also noticed that there could be a challenge for performance measurement disagreement because different stakeholders may dispute which metrics matter the most. So is it travel time reduction versus safety improvements versus carbon reduction, making the accountability politically contentious. So we should be thinking about that. And the long-term consistencies, political challenges, political changes and budget fluctuations can derail implementation plans, making difficult to hold the county accountable for the stated priorities. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Next, we'll do Tony at Planning Commission, and then we'll see if Daniel from PRC's mic is working for our final share.
All right, so the Planning Commission, we broke this down into largely one set of opportunities and one set of challenges. On the opportunities end, we started with the broad sweep of the transparent and accountability goal. It's going to give staff a lot of leeway to design various performance measures. My colleague who was just speaking mentioned that KPI piece is really important to make sure that we're actually delivering on what we want, and the goal is broad enough to accommodate that. The second, in terms of reliability, the language speaking to regional interconnectivity is going to be great because it gives, again, it empowers staff to work with Fairfax, to work with DC, to work with other localities around us to create a more holistic transportation network that isn't just focusing solely on what's happening within our county's borders. And the third opportunity that comes from that is that another piece of the goals on the emphasis on eliminating historical disparities between neighborhoods. Again, it gives staff a sort of ability to go on offense and to proactively go out and invest in areas of Arlington, mainly areas that are largely populated by people of color, lower income families, to go out proactively and invest in those communities in the way that they have not been historically. So we see those three big things as really good opportunities that this plan builds on. And far as the challenges go, we anticipate there's going to be some difficulties in improving transit reliability before the infrastructure is there to, beef that up, whether that's bus lanes, whether that's road diets, whatever. Before that gets there, we see that there's probably going to be a bit of an implementation issue, because you can only gain so many efficiencies by designing better routes before you run into the actual problems of just traffic on the street as it is today. Second, it's also unclear how a lot of these priorities and projects are going to be worked into the existing CIP. I don't know if there's going to be a big revision that will come next year, but obviously the county has its transportation plans for the next 10 years already baked. And so trying to work this in retroactively might be a little difficult, and will require amendments probably. And then the third challenge we see is similar to the second one, but it's working these new pieces of guidance and goals into all of our different area plans, all of our different our general land use plan, and a lot of our planning documents that span I think the 12 planning areas that Arlington has, and working these recommendations into all of them and in the projects. And then an extension of that is going to be communicating how these changes are beneficial towards different civic associations, towards residents who are involved in some sort of SPRCs and LRPCs and various community engagement meetings, that these changes will actually benefit them. Because a lot of, I think, as some of my other colleagues have spoken to today, a lot of them are, of the mind that the status quo is the preferred way of doing things, and they don't really want to change sometimes, especially when it comes to parking, traffic, etc. So communicating these goals as beneficial to actual residents is going to be a big piece of it. So those are the three opportunities and three challenges primarily that we see coming out of this plan.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Daniel, were you able to get your mic working to the point that you could talk through PRC's recommendations?
I think so. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you. Great. Go ahead.
Awesome. So many great ideas brought by the other commissioners, so I'll just hit a few that our commission talked about when it comes to the equitable and inclusive goal. For opportunities, we saw a lot of opportunities to continue adding bike lanes and bike infrastructure to formerly underserved areas. And that also involves kind of creating opportunities for those of us who are living in apartments to be able to access the great park system that Arlington has, whether it's through bikes or other public transit, and just also enhancing pedestrian safety ability for those folks to be able to access stuff like that. When it comes to challenges for the equitable and inclusive goal, we looked at Arlington's rising senior population. They have specific needs that need to be taken into account. A lot of that has already been discussed by my other commission members. There's a general affordability challenge of, the high cost of living in Arlington that is just part of every conversation that we have here. And then there's general land use development that kind of requires a lot of us to, whether we're going to live, work, or play, a lot of us unfortunately have to drive just due to the current state of things. So it's kind of finding ways to get out of that mindset and incentivize and encourage people to utilize other modes of transportation when they can. For the livable goal, we came up with some challenges for that. One being there's a bit of an invasive plant problem here in Arlington County. It's a big topic of conversation for my commission of late. And just that invasive plant problem it will and does cause issues in various transportation corridors. So the county really has to look at how we can get that under control, especially in areas around our parks. We have bike paths that are overrun with invasive plants and things of that nature. So that's going to be a challenge for that. And just in general, another challenge that we see is just that cars have traditionally been prioritized over people in a lot of ways in this region. So just again, it's working on changing that mindset and making sure the infrastructure is in place to sort of allow for those other modes to have their time in the sun also. For the reliability goal, we saw some opportunities to leverage the new art maintenance facility even more. Our commission had a great site visit over there a few months back, and there's a lot of opportunity there to sort of unlock the potential of that facility for improving bus service for the county. Let's see, there's also an opportunity when it comes to tech and real-time data analysis, just to sort of see how we are managing vehicle flow in a lot of different corridors. In terms of challenges, we talked a bit about just with all these different modes and changes to layouts and networks and things of that nature, we want to make sure that there's sufficient EMS personnel and coverage across the entire network, just to make sure that people can, rely on these networks and know that they're safe, which kind of sort of goes into the next goal of safety. And then there's also another challenge with, I guess, reliability and safety, where there's potential cybersecurity risks. We talked a little bit about this in our commission. Of the various traffic control and transit systems, there's always a potential for some cyber risks there that would need to be considered. Safety, another opportunity is just a general mindset of kind of cultivating not only an actual state of safety, but also, I guess, a reputation of safety, that kind of people sort of are talking to each other and recognizing that, before maybe I was afraid of taking the bus or taking the train, or, I didn't want to ride the bike because I didn't feel safe riding it, but just trying to message out that, these are modes that can and are safe, and investing in infrastructure to make sure that people feel safe when they're taking it, so that if they're not currently taking those modes, they're inspired to kind of give it a try. A risk with the safety, I already talked about some of them, but also someone else earlier talked about e-bikes and scooters. Some of these have a lot of, they seem to be going faster and faster in some areas. So just the rising speeds of those e-bikes and scooters, and making sure that we can allow for safety for pedestrians, the folks who aren't riding, and also, with the vehicles also that are already on the road, making sure that those who are on the e-bikes and scooters are safe. There's the larger question and risk of driverless vehicles, autonomous vehicles. Eventually, it's going to come to our region on a higher level, and just sort of thinking about how we can integrate those vehicles into our networks intentionally. So taking the necessary time to do that, but also not wanting to miss the boat when that time comes and those opportunities come for Arlington to, have those types of vehicles around, just because it's the way things are headed. And just in general, another safety concern is just that cars are seeming to get larger and larger. And obviously with that, you tend to have visibility concerns when it comes to safety for pedestrians and other bikers and non-car drivers. Sustainability, we talked about the opportunity just to make transit and biking even more robust and inviting for people, kind of touching on what we did earlier, and just pointing to it as an opportunity to contribute to a more sustainable environment in Arlington. Challenges, obviously, I think someone else touched on this earlier, but the jurisdictional question, you'll have federal and state policies that maybe don't align with Arlington's, or they run directly in contrast to them. So it's just a challenge trying to figure out how we can make a dent in the negative environmental impacts that are going on when neighboring jurisdictions may not have the same values as us. So that's a challenge. And the last goal, transparent and accountable. An interesting one that we talked about a bit is kind of a combined one of taking the opportunity to, take accountability for timely project delivery while still kind of balancing the need for public engagement. Obviously, we're all on this call. Arlington does a great job of engaging the public and making sure they get robust public engagement. But just trying to find that balance where we can get improvements and projects done in a timely manner while still getting that type of engagement so that we're able to capitalize on opportunity. And yeah, we didn't really have any big challenges for that one. So hope that helps. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Daniel. We are getting tight on time. And I know the network feedback is kind of an inherently more difficult thing to share in this format. The opportunities and challenges are easy to hear somebody say and kind of understand what everybody's talking about. The network feedback, I feel like, can be challenging to understand without, looking directly at the map yourself or doing a screen share or something like that. So I don't want to get bogged down in that a whole bunch. What I would like to do, even though we're technically out of time according to the agenda, I would like to at least save a few minutes here. If anybody has from their commission or committee homework a network suggestion feedback that felt particularly brilliant or weirdly clever or difficult to explain or possibly difficult to understand in text that would benefit from being explained in the meeting or verbally, I would love to carve out just a couple of minutes for that. Just raise your hand if you do. I looked through everybody's network feedback, and staff has been digging in depth, and a lot of it is very similar. I feel like a lot of us, it's easy to look at the map and be like, there's areas where there's just not good micro mobility connectivity right now, whether it's Shirlington or Fairlington or far north Arlington near Old Glebe or that sort of thing. But if any of these got something that's maybe a little off the beaten path or a little tough to explain, I would love to make some time for that. Why don't you go ahead, Pam?
I don't know if I fall in any of those categories, but the PAC represents pedestrians, and we're the first priority, so that makes us unique, if nothing else. And I want to quickly summarize what my points were at the backpack meeting about our response to this, and then spend like a minute talking about how we approach the maps. Okay, so pedestrian modal prioritization means that the county plans to allocate sufficient space for pedestrian comfort, safety, and convenience before allocating space for other transportation modes. We're not sure what that means. I assume that mainly we're talking about when the county is planning a major transportation corridor. That's the first thing they'll look at. Okay. Next point, the pedestrian infrastructure guidelines in the current pedestrian element are often inadequate and need updating. They're way too narrow for a lot of things. Therefore, the PAC will need to advocate strongly for policies and strategies that meet the needs of pedestrians of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. And the final major point, when a corridor is transit priority, the PAC will need to advocate for additional pedestrian space as bicyclists and micromobile riders may share the sidewalk. And our approach to the maps, we added a lot of destinations, and I hope that the county thinks very carefully about where do people actually want to go, whether they're biking or driving or walking or taking transit. And where people go on transit is often different from where they're biking, and those all need to be clear on the map. We looked at gaps, especially sidewalk gaps, and when we found them, they were part of a proposed transit or bike priority. We said, no, the sidewalks are terrible. You need to fix the sidewalks. There's a couple, I live on 19th Street. There's one on 20th that's bike. There's one on 23rd that's transit. And they both go up and over the ridge. The ridge is a terribly steep hill. It's hard to bike. It's hard to cross Arlington Ridge Road safely, especially if you are walking and biking. So if the county can figure out how to do a bike priority on 20th, which is going to be, I listed all the challenges, creating a safe crossing for Arlington Ridge Road is right up there. I asked that people focus on their own neighborhoods, which I did, and specifically, again, looking at the transit priority routes and making sure, to our knowledge, are there sidewalk issues? And that was it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Pam. Anybody else got something they want to have a chance to explain or share or anything like that?
This is Elizabeth Prio for the Disability Advisory Commission.
Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, I wanted to discuss that the plan doesn't really talk at all about STAR, and STAR is another form like art of being able to help people in that last mile or that first mile. And it was brought up by the aging, the Department of Aging, but I really feel that if you guys are going to turn everything into bikes and sidewalks, that's fantastic and needed. But you really have to, as a committee, speak up for Art and STAR, because we had them at our meeting, and he said there was a definite possibility of them being cut, and they were already cut a significant amount last year. So we've been talking about, or a aging division was talking about how you just have to think about people who aren't going to be biking around and aren't going to be walking long distances. So I suggest, what if you just become the STAR person and bring it up every time? I mean, one of you on staff. So thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I think, Kristen, let's go ahead and move into the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, sounds good. And I do just want to share that everybody will get the homework assignments shared. We post them online afterwards. So if you feel like there's something that was important, it's going to be something everybody gets to see as well. So we are really excited that we're starting phase 3 engagement on Monday. It has been so much work getting where we are today, and we're excited that you guys are going to be joining us on this process. We are really, as part of phase 3 engagement, tying back to the fact that we are building on the endorsed vision and goals that the board acted on in July. These are our foundation. These are what we are working towards. It's what this process is leveraging. Everything we heard from phase 1 and 2 engagement, all of the values and priorities that people expressed during phase 1, all of the important pieces that we heard related to the goals that maybe didn't make it explicitly into the goals are informing how we have developed the pieces of information that we are asking for feedback on as part of phase 3 engagement. We've heard a lot from people kind of asking, what does this new plan look like? What is this refresh plan going to be? Everyone knows that it's going to be different than the current transportation plan that's modally focused, that has the 6 modal elements. And we decided to kind of create a graphic that helps explain a little bit of the stacking of how everything works together. Overarching vision is what we're working towards, supported by the 6 endorsed goals by the board. Those are our kind of foundation, what we work towards. Those will be supported by policies. Those policies have slightly more detail about how we get to the vision and goals. Then we have 3 kind of unique pieces that relate to the network itself, the modal priority networks, curb uses that we'll introduce tonight, and then eventually street typologies that we will tie back into all of this after phase 3 engagement. And then we are going to develop, after phase 3 engagement, strategies that detail how we work towards the policies. This phase of engagement is really our opportunity to share, to find out what people think about the policies, the draft modal priority networks, and the draft curb uses. We are going to be doing this through engagement like we have the last 2 times in multiple ways. We launch on Monday on October 27th, and this comment period for phase 3 engagement will last through midnight on Sunday, December 7th. We really are conveying that everything that we're sharing builds on the last 2 phases. That is a key piece that we want people to understand and realize and know, is that everything that we've heard before is so important to what we're sharing through this phase. And then that these policies and the priority networks are intended to work towards our goals. They are how we get there. questions that we're asking the community that we want feedback on is, do the draft modal priority networks meet your travel needs if they were magically implemented today, and or what you think you need to do in the future? Do they work towards creating a better overall transportation network for Arlington? Do the draft policies work towards the endorsed goals? Are they getting us there? And will they help create a better transportation network for our community? We're doing this as we have through multiple phases and types of engagement. Through phase 3, we're going to have 2 open houses, the first of which is November 5th, Wednesday, November 5th from 4 to 7 p.m. at Bosman in our lobby. We're really hoping that a lot of people just can come naturally swing by and talk to us and engage with the content. We're also doing one on Saturday, November 22nd at Arlington Mill from 1:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon, a weekend opportunity for people who just can't make it work during the work week. We get it. Lives are busy. We're doing 3 pop-up events. Mega Mart, we're not going to be advertising that one. That one, we just want to make sure that we're giving the opportunity for our Spanish-speaking community to be engaged with. We are also going to the Westovers Farmers Market and the National Landing Water Park. Those dates will be on the website and we'll share them with you as well. We're going to have an online feedback form that is available at our events, but also available for anybody during the comment period to take. There's a lot of information that we're going to be sharing. The feedback form is probably going to be the most digestible way for people to engage with the materials and share their thoughts and their perspectives. We're also doing a lot of different canvassing events, some of them at high traffic locations, like some metro stations, some farmers markets. And then we're also piggybacking on a lot of different community events where we can to kind of spread the word about this. Some people know they have the opportunity to share with us. We're going to keep engaging with you guys. This is something that's continuing to be a part of our engagement process. We're working internally with staff, not just from the Division of Transportation, but all of DES and CPHD and other groups, parks that care and use our right-of-way and have an investment in how we create a transportation plan for the county. We're doing regional coordination. We're actually meeting with our regional partners to talk about the plan. We are working with our bids. We met with our bids yesterday just to kind of let them know this is coming and we want them to help spread the word, but also that we want to know what they're thinking too, since they have an interest in our right-of-way. And then we're doing listening sessions again, as we did during the first 2 phases, to reach community groups that are typically underrepresented through traditional engagement in the county. That's what that's the how we're doing it. And then the what we're sharing are 3 kind of unique components of what will eventually make our transportation plan. The first are those modal priority networks that we had a whole meeting talking about, so I'm not going to belabor what's going in them, but I am just going to remind everybody that these priority networks show where we are going to prioritize the safe, comfortable, and efficient movement of the specific mode. So if it's a transit priority network, we are focusing on making transit work. If it's a bike and micromobility network, we are looking to make sure that we can accommodate an all ages and abilities bike facility on that route. We are working through this process. You guys were part of the development process. You're going to see maps on a couple of pages that will look different from what you saw when you came to us on September 11th and sat down around those tables. But you know that we took the existing transportation plan, other pieces of planning within the county to develop these networks. We deconflicted locations where we don't think that we can do it all. We can't create safe and comfortable pedestrian facilities while accommodating transit, while creating an all in ages and bikes facilities. We just don't have the space as much as we'd love to. And then we did a gap analysis. We had you guys do the gap analysis. We did the gap analysis. I'll talk about it in a bit, but there were a lot of overlaps and locations that our commission advisory group members identified, that we as staff identified. And as I was going through, it's like, we have that, which was great. We're going to use these networks over the next 20 to 30 years to understand how we make decisions about a right-of-way. I think, Pam, you expressed it well. When we do corridor studies, pedestrian priority means we make sure that we have good pedestrian facilities along that corridor before we allocate space to other modes. It's really important to remember that while modal priorities are important, they are not design specific. That all gets worked out through corridor studies, through intersection design, through detailed studies in the future based on the context that is happening then. It's also important to remember that just because we're creating these priority networks doesn't mean that people won't be able to continue to drive on them. It just means that cars aren't the priority mode. People will still have the opportunity to drive, albeit slightly slower maybe, and not quite as quickly as maybe they do today, because we will make sure that people can either safely walk, bike, or take transit along the corridor. So this is that articulation of our modal priority. You've seen it before. At the top are pedestrians. We want to make sure that they have safe and comfortable facilities along our corridors before we think about the second priority when it's identified. If it's transit, that means we're going to prioritize transit and see how we can make it work efficiently and well for those riders. If it's bike, it means we're looking at how we accommodate an all ages and bicycle facility on that corridor. And then if we do have a third priority, it means once we've figured out how we make sure pedestrians are safe and comfortable and how we are accommodating second mode, we look for the third and see what we can do to accommodate that mode. So we really appreciated all of the work and thought and time and energy you put into your comments on the draft modal networks. They were helpful. We're actually going to be getting you a comment like line by line of if we integrated it, why we didn't integrate it, all of that. It's a very long document. I pre-apologize, but I think it'll be very helpful for you to know kind of what we did with the information you shared, because we know you spent the time and we took the time to review it recommendation by recommendation. We heard a lot of themes that people want to see connections to schools, to parks, to community centers in this network, that those are important destinations within our community, that there's a desired connectivity north-south for both transit and bicycle and micromobility. And that was a theme that we heard from a number of people's responses. We also saw a desire for additional routes for the bicycle and micromobility network in the areas along Columbia Pike, making sure those bike boulevards were accurately captured on the map, that we had parallel routes to Langston Boulevard within the map, that Shirlington had better connectivity, that the area around Gunston Middle School and the areas around Wakefield High School had better connectivity. We do just want to recognize the fact that we did all of this work. We looked at every single line, and you're going to see a lot of connections, and we're not going to linger on these maps too long because that's what engagement's for. But you'll see a lot of the recommendations you made integrated into this map. Not every single recommendation is, because not every single recommendation, either we may have had a parallel route that we thought was easier and more likely to be implemented, or there's some locations where we just don't think it's feasible to integrate a bicycle and micromobility segment along with an existing transit priority. So we will continue to hear from the community, to gather feedback. We like to say we're on draft 5 of 16 or 15 or 16, that we are still working through this process. And that's what phase 3 engagement is the opportunity to interact with these a bit more. Again, I am not going to linger on these maps very long. They are small PDFs. They do not show the detail that you want to see on this screen. This is the transit map. You can see that it probably looks somewhat similar to what we shared with you on September 11th. It's one that's going to change a lot less. There's only so many locations within the county that we can reasonably run transit, and or that it would make sense to design streets to accommodate transit. What I will like to point out is we have 4 dots on these maps. They're not visible at this scale. They're not supposed to be visible at this scale, but we have identified where our schools are, where community centers are, where our government services, so SIFAX, the county government building, and then where our libraries are on this map. So those are like some of the critical destinations. We can't put everything on because if we do, eventually this becomes less legible. We are also working with our consultants, and this map is not final yet. It's going to look nicer by the time we get to community engagement on street labels. We have probably a list of about 2 to 3 dozen additional street labels that we're sending over to them in the next day so that they can make this look much nicer with their graphic designers by the time we are physically at public engagement. You can also see it's very small to see, but we put pedestrian priority as the top line of this legend. So it kind of acknowledges that all of these streets have pedestrian priority, except for some of our limited access facilities. 66 is not getting pedestrian priority. 395, GW Parkway, we're not planning pedestrian facilities on those. That would be difficult and likely dangerous. But we really do appreciate all of the thoughtful feedback and comments that we got, just not on the networks, but also on kind of how we display this information for the community, because we know if you had those questions, we would get those in person too. I also want to say that you will probably be very excited to know that during phase 3 engagement, there will be a reference map that you can easily zoom in and out on, and an online form. It's not a comment map, it's a reference map, so that you can go in and see kind of where these recommendations are much more easily than you could if we uploaded a PDF exclusively onto the website. Going over the bicycle and micromobility map, not going to zoom in. we can't go line by line tonight. We would be here until midnight probably, but I think you'll see that there is a lot more connectivity on this map than what you saw at the map that we brought on September 11th. We looked for parallel routes for glebe. They're not all there yet. One of the things that we talked about as staff is if we need right of way that we think is going to be harder or specifically take single family or people's residences, that it's not something we're putting out on the map to go to the community with, but that it's something we want to hear from the community that that is an important enough priority that we should consider acquiring right of way in the future if necessary. But we really wanted to look for those connections within our right of way before we take those steps. So as part of phase 3 engagement, we know we're going to get a lot of comments, questions, considerations on this map, but I think that you'll just see that there is a significant more just density lines on this map than what we did during not phase 2 engagement, during our advisory group meeting in September. So we do just want to say again, thank you. You'll get this in a PDF form tomorrow morning. I would say, I know it's going to be you're going to want to zoom in and you're going to want to know, but I would say save yourself the pain. We will have interactive maps that you can easily zoom in on Monday. If you really want to spend a little bit of time this weekend looking at it, do it, but it'll be so much easier on Monday and you will be able to like zoom in right where you care about and see it there. So, if I were in your shoes, I'd be looking at this map too tomorrow when I got it, but save the deep dive once we have a more user-friendly version. So with that, I just want to say thank you all. We know the time and energy that went into the comments, and they were very helpful and very constructive for us to use as we refined these maps. Next is an overview of policies. We really want to say thank you again. You guys just did a really wonderful report out from all of your committee and commission's feedback. Some of the things that we put on here are just highlights that we kind of saw either really rise to the top for us of like, oh, that is a great opportunity, or is that a challenge that we really do think is going to be something that we have to think about, or places that we heard a lot of repetition. I'm not going to read all of these off. You guys just spent, the first part of this meeting sharing those with us. We want to say thank you because a lot of what was highlighted here, we checked to make sure we feel has homes within the policies. So they're not policies themselves, but these pieces of information will be strategies that work underneath these policies to make sure that we work towards the transportation network and create kind of the policies that we need to allow for the actions that we need to take to get where we need to go. So you'll see kind of our summary when we share this presentation with you tomorrow, but a lot of the themes that we heard in general are cost is going to be a challenge, community perspective on change is challenging, people's habits are difficult to kind of push the needle on, that a lot of what we want to do really does require a change in driving behavior, that we want to see VMT, not just because we know it's important, but because all of the things we want to do with the right of way requires less vehicle space. A couple of things that we saw resonate a number of times within the transparency and accountable is the difficulty that we'll have communicating some of these trade-offs within the community. And then we also recognize that these are going to need to be integrated into the CIP. And luckily we do have an every 2-year cycle where we get the opportunity to consider what we've integrated based off of current planning guidance. So all of this will nest well under strategies that will live under the policies that we are engaging on as part of phase 3 engagement. We're here right now. I'm going to read this off the slide because I actually think it's a great articulation. If the vision and goals describe our destination, our policies describe what we need to do to get there. And when we develop the strategies will be our how-to guide. So we are kind of at that midpoint right now of the what we need to do, but not explicitly the blow by blow of how we do it. We spent a lot of time developing these policies based off of everything we heard through phase 1 and 2 engagement, the values that we heard from the advisory group feedback on the vision and goals during phase 2. There was so much information in the feedback that we heard as we developed the vision and goals that was instrumental into kind of siphoning into the policies. We also looked at current county plans, the current MTP, and peer cities. How are they creating their policies? How are they framing them? What is kind of the professional best practice right now at the level setting of what we put in policy versus what we put in more detailed strategies or actions. As we did this, we really did reflect back on some of those community values that we heard, that safety is top of mind, that we need a sustainable transportation network, that people want reliable transportation, that equity is important, and that people want to be able to go where they want to go when they need to be there. Those were really themes that were present through engagement during both phases. As we developed policies, we also created some kind of internal guides just so that we knew kind of how we were thinking about our policies and how we framed them. We wanted to make sure that they were reflective of the vision and goals and work towards them, but also expressed community values that we heard. We wanted to make sure that policies weren't so specific that they weren't able to kind of evolve their application over time. We didn't want something that was so 2025 that by 2030 it was like, oh, that policy was written in 2025 and I see it. We wanted to make sure that the policies promote and work towards at least one goal, but most work towards multiple. You won't see it on the next slide, but when we engage with the community, we're going to actually have little icons next to each of the policies that show the goals that the policy works towards. Each goal has about 9 to 10 policies that we think nest under it in some way, shape, or form. And then we wanted to make sure that the policies were global, that they weren't specifically modal, that like policies didn't just relate to pedestrians or to transit or to bicycle and micromobility, but they talked more about what we want to see out of our transportation network. And our strategies are where we start to talk specifically about modes, how we plan for transit, how we integrate bicycle and micromobility into our networks, so that these policies can work across a lot of different pieces of our right-of-way. We're going to engage with the community, ask them to tell us if they think these are, heading in the right direction, if they're getting us there, if they need a little bit of work, or maybe if a policy isn't something that resonates or that they value for our transportation network. I'm going to highlight just a couple of policies. You guys will have these, you're going to read them, you're going to engage with them. But one of the policies that we created actually relates directly back to the importance of using the modal priority networks to advance our interconnected transportation network in the future. We have coordination with regional, state, local, federal jurisdictions as a policy, evaluating new technology tools and best practices, and implementing those that actually improve our ability to do transportation. We have a number of policies that relate to safety and mobility within the right-of-way, policy that reflects the importance of our curb lane and street space and all of the things that need to happen within that space and the things they do for our community. We have a policy, I double clipped something here, so I have to fix a copy error for you before I send this over to you tomorrow. But a policy that recognizes that during temporary disruptions such as construction and large events, that we are planning for safe and convenient temporary options for people. We have policies that speak to making sure that we have long-term funding sources for our transportation network, that we create the opportunity to integrate biophilic principles, street trees, and green infrastructure into the planning, design, and operations of our transportation system, and that we collaborate internally with other county departments so that we work together to work towards our mutual goals in the right-of-way. Did not read every single policy. You don't want me to read every single policy, but we think is very important is that your committees and commissions, as part of phase 3 engagement, think about these policies. You're going to have a homework assignment we give you at the end about what we want from the committees and commissions that make up the advisory group as far as feedback goes on these. Then I have one more piece that we are sharing with the community as part of phase 3 engagement. This is completely new to the advisory group. We have been working on it and getting it ready for phase 3 engagement. But it's really the start of a curb space hierarchy. But right now, it's just talking about curb lane uses, how we use that space between the travel lane and the curb within the county. We know that that is highly sought after space. It has a lot of things that need to happen in it. There's a lot of different pressures that it feels. We came up with 8 different uses: transportation safety, modal priority, network connectivity, goods access, people access, public space activation, utility access, parking, and greening. And at first, we just kind of had all 8 of these as boxes. And we were talking as staff, and as we had conversation, it was just like, transportation safety has to be the thing that we consider first when we talk about the curb. If we need space to daylight intersections, if we need space for curb bulb outs to minimize crossing distances, that's what we need that space for first. We need to make sure that we are using this limited piece of our right of way in a way that makes it safe for people to move. We can't balance that against greening or public space activation or goods access, because if we don't have safety, nothing else really rises to that level. And then when we thought about it too, it's like, we have these modal priority networks that we know are so critical to moving people in the county. And that once we approve them through this plan, that is our direction about we acknowledge and we identified these networks as important for people to have the ability to take transit conveniently to their destinations, for them to bike on an all ages and comfort ability. And if we need the curb space, the curb lane to realize those modal networks, that shouldn't be competing with parking, or that shouldn't be competing with a street tree. So we made that the second priority from our perspective as staff. And we're going out to the community to ask, A, do you agree with these as the top two priority? Safety, then completing the modal priority networks. And then are these other uses right? Are we missing anything? Is there another curb use that you're not thinking about, that we're not thinking about? We've got definitions for them so people can kind of contextualize what we mean when we mean goods access. Goods access is pick up and drop off for deliveries. It's actual like freight delivery to businesses. It is refuse collection. It's getting the trash away from locations. For utilities access, it's signal poles, fire hydrants. For people access, it's bus stops and stations. It's passenger loading zones, which kind of is that whole umbrella of Uber and Lyft, your spouse dropping you off, your friend dropping you off, a taxi, parking in all of its forms, long and short term, public space activation. We know streeteries, public art, other types of things want to happen in that space. Greening, bioswales, rain gardens, street trees, or planters. Sometimes we need that space to achieve those. We also have, I think I hit them all, public estimate. We're asking people, we're going to have activities for them to start thinking about how we prioritize them. These are uses that we've described. How would they prioritize them? We haven't put out a recommendation about it. So we're going to have a couple of interactive activities, both through our questionnaire and at our public meetings, where we have 4 different kind of land use types within the county. And we're going to ask people what their top 3 priorities would be in those areas for that space, if we've already made sure that we're accommodating transportation safety and our mobile networks. And obviously there's a question that confirms whether or not they agree with that prioritization too. So that is the end of me talking for now. Does anybody have a clarifying question? I know I just threw a lot at you, but if there's something that's helpful as far as your understanding for when you go back to your committees and commissions to talk about the homework that you think would be really helpful, we will be at engagement. We're going to be sharing more materials. There's going to be a lot of information online that hopefully helps in a little bit more detail explain this. But we are here today, and we want to make sure that if you have questions, we can answer them for you.
Go ahead, Pam.
Hi, Kristen. Thank you so much for sharing the slides ahead of time. So I did go through them. I found some of them a bit confusing. The first one on draft policies that kind of outlines the whole thing, there's so much information on it. I had a hard time following it until I figured out, oh, you have to do 1, 2, 3. Although there's different 1, 2, 3s on it. There's one specific change in a word that I recommend on that page. You have, this is the page at the bottom of 1. Language should center how transportation accommodates people and livability rather than the network or infrastructure. I would change center to focus on. Center is not really quite clear in that context. And I have other suggestions on the draft policies. The main one that I want to bring up now is the 2 of 3 during temporary disruptions such as construction and large events provide safe and convenient transportation options. It needs to include accessible in there as well, per the DAC definition of accessible. And that's a huge problem with a lot of the MOT funds. They're not really accessible for people with disabilities. So those are two more urgent ones, and then I have others that we can talk about sometime.
So I will say we're not changing anything pre-engagement. We appreciate kind of this opportunity, but these are not kind of, this isn't the feedback period. This is us sharing kind of where we are. We have all of phase 3 engagement to collect feedback from everyone as we work through engagement. We are at the printing press at this moment.
That's fine.
Yeah,
But
no,
they will be written comments at some point.
No, and we appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that when you didn't see changes, it wasn't because we didn't hear you. It was just the time and place that we are in the process.
Anybody else really want to make, this is a super important engagement period. You know, we're really getting to the point where the rubber hits the road. And I think we need everybody to be pushing this engagement out to your networks, encouraging people to show up to the public meetings, encouraging everyone to take the feedback form and fill it out, and sharing it to your neighborhood and sharing it to your, you know, your pickleball group and all that sort of thing. So if you've got any questions about, you know, what are we engaging on right now and what are we trying to get out of people, now's the time to figure that out, because we want to get the best possible and the most possible feedback on these really critical pieces. You know, we got to get the policies right before we can get the strategies right. And, you know, certainly there's going to be some back and forth about the networks. All right, I think you must have presented very well, Kristen, because I'm not seeing any more questions.
Or it's getting late enough. So Chris kind of alluded to it, but your homework is the engagement process. It is so important that we hear from your committee and commission as a whole in this feedback period. So we have homework that we will more articulately share with you in writing. But the gist is we want your feedback on the draft modal priority networks, on the draft policies, and on the draft curb uses, but specifically the totality voice of your committee and commission. That is so important when the group as a whole has thought, talked through, and kind of balanced even internally to your committee and commission what your priorities are, to have a priority voice so that it's not kind of this commissioner is really passionate about this and this commissioner is passionate about that, but that you guys have created a consensus kind of perspective on all of this. That is so helpful for us, because then we hear it from the advisory group as a whole. We are going to hear from a ton of individuals as part of phase 3 engagement. Internal staff are going to be continuing to give us feedback. We need all of those different pieces and the different perspectives that we understand they're coming from to help make sure that once we get all of the feedback and we go into the next phase of refining them, like we did for the vision and goals, that we know where the thoughts are coming from and who they're representing, so that we can work them all in as we make these edits. So the first question that we're really going to ask you to focus on is, do these draft networks work towards creating a better transportation network? What is it doing for you? Do you think they're getting you where they need to go? Would it serve you in the future if they were implemented? Do the draft policies work towards the endorsed goals? Do we have something that's missing at that high level, knowing that we're not to the strategies yet, where we all really, really want to start populating how we do this? But do the policies have homes? Are they heading towards those strategies? Do you see your strategies have a nesting location? And then, are there any curb uses missing? How would you guys prioritize these curb categories in different contexts? So like in a single family neighborhood or low density neighborhood, in our more urban corridors. And then also let us know if you think that our top 1 and 2 uses, safety and then the mobility networks, if that's the right approach, or if it should all be together, or if just safety should be on top. We're going to ask that you have that consolidated feedback to us from your advisory, from your representative groups for your advisory commissioner role. by Wednesday, December 3rd, you do not need to remember all of this off the top of your head. We will be reminding you. We will be emailing. And we do have a date already on the books because December is a hot commodity as far as scheduling goes. But our next meeting will be Thursday, December 11th. And that meeting, pretty much 80% of it is going to be your opportunity as an advisory group to share commission and committee's feedback, to talk about synergies. We're going to share a very high level kind of like numbers takeaway from engagement. We'll only have been like a few days post closing of engagement, so we won't be able to tell you like here are the themes or anything along that yet. That'll come at the subsequent meeting because we want to make sure that we're considering the themes we hear from phase 3 engagement along with the themes that we're hearing from the advisory group homework. All of that together is so important for us as we go back to refine the policies, to refine the network so that we don't do it just based off of phase 3 engagement and then hear from you and have to reconcile everything. So that is why that meeting is going to be so important to us, why you guys spending that thoughtful consideration on the homework is so important. High level, big next steps. Big milestone, phase 3 engagement launches on Monday until early December. That is kind of the big next piece in the homework associated with it. We want to make sure you just have a little bit of kind of next steps in mind. In the winter, we're going to take everything we hear from the advisory group homework from phase 3 engagement, and we're going to refine the modal priority networks and policies. It's going to happen sometime February-ish. We're going to develop strategies that work towards those refined policies. That'll happen midwinter. We're also going to, in tandem, develop street typologies that are much more just kind of the framework refresh of what we have today to make them a little bit easier to use. Then we're going to get additional feedback on those refined modal priorities and networks sometime midwinter. And then we are going to have our proposed modal priority networks and plan policies late winter. Feedback loops on all of that. That all leads towards us releasing a draft plan in mid to late spring for community feedback. That will be the plan kind of in its straw man form for the community to respond to, for feedback to be provided that we'll spend the summer integrating, editing, pulling back in so that we have a draft plan for the board to consider in fall 2026. So that's kind of the big broad strokes of our next steps. The biggest takeaway right now is we're here, we're launching phase 3 engagement on Monday. We need your help. We want you to spread the word about all of the engagements. We're going to make sure that you have the website information. We have a comms toolkit that will link for you so that if you have friends that have listservs that you want to put this out on, you have the information to share, you have the language to share. We want to see you at the open houses, come to the pop-ups. We are really excited about this phase of engagement. To Chris's point, this is where we start getting into the details that everybody is passionate about, and we want to make sure that you're there and part of it. So that's the end of me talking again.
All right. If I haven't seen anything in the chat yet, but if anybody is interested in offering public comment who is not a member of the working group, now would be the time to put your name in the chat. Or if you can't put your name in the chat, you can go ahead and unmute right now and give me your name via voice. All right, hearing no one, I believe we have no public comment this evening. And with that, I think our meeting is concluded. I thank you all for giving up your evening for this. I appreciated hearing everybody's summaries of their homework. Appreciated. I think I got a better takeaway of people's suggestions than even my attempt to skim through and read it in detail in advance. So I appreciate that. And I look forward to everyone's help spreading the word about the feedback that starts on Monday.
And thank you all, and you'll be getting lots of emails from us.
Thank you.
Watch your inbox. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, all.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.